Bit of a mea culpa here. In my Louisville Annotated Map video, I made a bit of a mistake. I said that Louis had the most stash maps, and that's objectively wrong, because, understandably, Muldraugh actually has the most annotated maps, leading you to and spawning in loot in interesting locations. And yeah, we've all been to Muldraugh, sure, but there are some interesting places that you might have missed. Now, Louis does have almost as many maps, falling too short, but what you'll soon find out is that the writing of Muldraugh's maps makes many of its 18 stash maps fall short. And since the story isn't good enough to sort them out, we'll sort these maps out according to the loot they spawn, or fail to spawn. We'll start off with a bang, and a series of maps that will lead you to gun caches. Let's start out with a prime example. You see, Stash Map 1 leads you to this house, with this, poignant bit of writing. I have in the past dramatized what might have been the motivation behind some of these annotations, and this text has moved me so deeply that I shall now do so again. Must hide guns. Oh, it brings a tear to the eye. All joking aside, the other two markings are fluff texts that do nothing in game terms other than point to likely areas to check out or avoid. And yes, I have checked the game's code on this. They do literally nothing. But in this house, you'll find extra guns and ammo in the kitchen and a stash in the floorboards. Also, this house once had the chance to spawn in extra Zeds and traps, but they've since been removed in the latest versions. Another 3-marking map shows where you might find meds, where you might find trouble, and then in exaggerated prose explains that there are now some guns in the spiffers. Specifically, it will spawn extra loot in the kitchen cabinets and will spawn in a duffel with more guns and ammo. And the map will help noobs find the local spiffo for some burgers. Finally, we get a nice piece of writing. Not a lot. Not gonna win a Pulitzer or anything, but definitely good enough for me. With only a single marking, the map leads you to the trailer park and spawns in some extra guns in the kitchen and bathroom, and will also spawn in a duffalo guns. Another solid piece of regret being conveyed by this map. Clearly a former security guard, or someone familiar with their operation enough to remind you to check the bank. Not for now worthless money or jewelry, but for security's guns. And it does ensure that you will find some by spawning in extra guns in the cupboards and an extra duffel somewhere in the building, usually on the first floor, but make sure to head upstairs to the kitchen for even more loot. Lies, all lies! Or at least an informed guess that will occasionally be correct. So ignore the lots here. Maybe visit the warehouse to the north, but this map will spawn in more guns in this particular house. Specifically, this map and the next 2 maps are all shotgun stashes, so you'll be finding lots of boomsticks in the usual places. And you'll also find some extras in this floorboard stash, which does tend to move around the house a bit, so check for the outline. And here we have another map reminding you where to find medical supplies, pointing you to a possible location of a horde that may or may not be there, but pointing to a house with extra shotguns. And this one also has some loose floorboards somewhere that are worth checking out. Our final gun cache of Muldraugh leads us down south to this restaurant that's been designated as a gun cache. So there should be shotguns in the big kitchen and many cabinets in the bathroom. You'll also find that the game specifically spawns in extra zombies and barricades it up to level 50, which means 2 things. 1, you'll find about half of the doors and windows will have planks on them. I really wish they could sometimes be metal bars, but that's beside the point. And 2, since there are Zeds inside the barricades, the devs missed an opportunity to have the note say, "They have taken the bridge and the second hall. We have barred the gates, but cannot hold them for long. The ground shakes. Drums, drums in the deep. We cannot get out. A shadow moves in the dark. We cannot get out. They are coming." These next 6 maps will lead you to, among other things, good places to find food, melee weapons, and survival gear, and building materials. Map 5 is almost not even an annotated map. I even thought for a moment that something was wrong and it was empty, but no. Southeast, there's this house that spawns in a bunch of tools, food, and building supplies, and a crate somewhere in the house. But it firmly refuses to spawn in any story at all, so don't even try. Now, here is a bit of story. Map 13 tells the tale of a supply run interrupted, and we're left to guess where exactly they called home, for their interrupted run was halfway and left them to barricade this house up to level 80 and leave all the tools and supplies they didn't have time to use around the house, and in a crate, which is probably what they were carrying. The other markings are ignorable. This building might be a decent base once fixed up, and the barricades help with that, but there's not much other reason to visit normally. Some good story in this house right here, and a crate full of tools and building supplies in the kitchen too. Unfortunately, whoever was left to barricade the house didn't do their job, as there won't be any boards or curtains sealing off this northerly house. It may not be a really big base, but if you find this map early enough, it could be a good start. You'll find lots of melee weapons, food, even some guns in the kitchen here, but not much story. You can entirely ignore the other markings other than Plan B. You might need to bring a crowbar or claw hammer, though, to get into the house, as it's barricaded up to level 80. There could be a good story here, as you'll supposedly find this on a wandering zombie, and you'll be greeted by a few other denizens that might or might not have already been sent by the same annotated map, only to meet their end here. This stash will spawn in 7 zombies and a bunch of survivor cache loot, so you'll find plenty of weapons, food, and gear once you clear out the rabble. Now, this map is certainly put in here for newer players, as the note to the middle of Muldraugh is a nice warning for noobs that their gunshots will attract more zombies. And for the loot, you'll find that this house here is barricaded up to level 80 and is designated as a survivor house for loot purposes. So, stopping by will net you some nice weapons and gear early on. Haha! Nightstick for the win! Now, these next 2 maps are kind of the oddballs in the bushel. They won't spawn in the usual guns or weapons or food. Map 15 is set up as a medicine cache, as would be indicated by the caption on the map. Unfortunately, the loot pool isn't set up to drop extra meds into almost all the other containers, so there's only one container with extra medical goodies, and it's one of those extra fun floorboard stashes. Map 17 is a bit of a mixed bag, unfortunately. There is a little bit of story going on here, but not much, and though it does point to a few nice stores, it doesn't specifically spawn in any extra loot to those stores, and the stash description is even set to the 2nd floor of the building, so even if it were to want to spawn loot, it couldn't. The final 3 maps that can spawn leading you to Muldraugh are an interesting lot, as they can be dangerous to stumble onto without warning. Not as dangerous as one of them in West Point, but I'll be getting to those maps soon, so subscribe to get notified. Oh, and in October, we're also going to be hosting our second Paint the Town Red event, Chinatown Extended Edition, where factions battle over safe houses for points and glory. So sign up in our Discord for more information. Map 2. There's good news and bad news about Map 2. The good news is that this house to the southeast is easy to get to and will provide you with a number of guns and a supply of ammo. The bad news is that it will also spawn in a number of Zeds, around 10 by our count, so you'll have to work a little bit extra to clear it out, and you'll need to come with already having weapons. And if you're an old hand at annotated maps, the extra Zeds might catch you off guard. You'll also find a duffel bag around somewhere with even more guns. Map 9 is another map that is almost not annotated at all. It's just the one warning to stay away on it, and it is kind of in the middle of a lot of Zeds already. And they do spawn in another chunk of Zeke just for funsies. It also has 3 containers that can host that extra loot. I'd really just say skip this one, but it did spawn in a katana and a machete for me, so... Map 10 leads to a small little house that's got extra weapons spawned into it. and another squad of zombies as the icing on the cake. This loot is specifically survivor loot, so fewer guns but more chance of machetes and other good weapons. And there you have it, all the annotated maps of Muldraugh. Check out my other flavorful guides for the maps to Louis, Rosewood, Riverside, etc. And I've also made guides detailing all the random events that can pop up. Yes, every single one of them. I checked the code to be sure. And I've got a ton of field guides for items in the game, too.